She reads the energy of the living and the dead.
Welcome to Soul Guide with Vondie Lozano, a show about past lives, life between lives, and this life.
Hey everybody, I'm Vondie Lozano, and today we have with us a very special guest, Irish psychic medium Sandie Byrne. But before I introduce Sandie, I just wanted to remind you that for all of you who participate by commenting or asking questions, you are entered into our drawing to receive one of our special Life Between Lives bags at the end. So, as some of you know, I began my Life Between Lives journey as a medium and doing mediumship training. And in my last class, I learned about Life Between Lives hypnosis. So I was not a gifted medium, but I was pretty good at hypnosis. So that's why I went down this path. But had I been a gifted medium, I would probably still be doing that today. But I know Sandie considers an ability, not a gift. So I would love to hear more about that. So let me just start by introducing her and saying that Sandie is from Ireland, Tipperary. She comes from a long line of readers, psychics, and mediums. And she has her grandmother and her great-grandmother who were doing this. And I can't wait to hear more about her and how she came to all of this and her messages for us today. So let me bring Sandie into the stream. Hi, Sandie.
Hello, Vondie. Fáilte rótaíomh go léir ó Hibredáin. So hello
Oh,
from
yes.
Tipperary.
What does that say?
I said hello to everybody from Tipperary.
Was that
That's
Gaelic?
where I'm from. Irish, yeah, Irish.
Oh.
Gaelic is more Scottish.
Oh, okay.
So we're Irish.
Okay.
So yeah, just to say hello to everybody. And you know, you talk yourself down way too much, Vondie, because yes, I do say that the mediumship is an ability, it's not a gift. So be kind to yourself. Everything in life that we do takes practice, and mediumship is no different. We all have the ability to connect with spirit, but you know, it's like speaking German or Russian or whatever, Portuguese. You know, you just have to practice it on a daily basis, and it gets stronger and stronger, you know.
And I did practice, and I actually did get some connections. I had a neighbor upstairs who passed, and when my mom passed, and I got some connections and some validations actually. But
100%.
yes, I didn't take to it like a fish to water as some do. So no, you probably did. So let me start by asking. Oh, and I want to let everybody know Sandie's podcast is Life After Life. It's the podcast. She also has a lot of stuff on our website, which we'll tell you about more later on, but it's at sandiebyrne.com. We'll mention it again at the end for those who come later. But I was on Sandie's podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and she graciously offered to come and be with us. But I had questions. She was interviewing me about Life Between Lives, but I had tons of questions. So maybe we can ask some of those now. So
Absolutely.
I'd love to find out a little bit about what it was like for you growing up. One, in a family of, I noticed you call it readers, people with psychic and mediumship abilities. So what was it like that was just kind of regular growing up in Ireland, you know, that we might not be as familiar with? Like you said, you have castles that you see from your window right now. But then what was it like also growing up in a family of readers, and how was that for you?
Well, I live in the countryside now, but I actually grew up in town. It's probably considered a small town, considering, you know, the size of towns in the States. But I guess there was probably, when I was growing up in Thurles town, there was about maybe 18 to 20,000 people. So that was considered a big town. And the town where I grew up was where they used to train all of the Catholic priests. So we had this college. Thurles is known as the cathedral town. Okay, so obviously we have a cathedral, and on each side of the cathedral is a convent, an Ursuline convent. Sorry, my camera's going all fuzzy today, whatever's wrong. We have 2 convents, Roman Catholic nuns, Ursuline and Presentation Sisters. And across the road from the cathedral, we have a college. Now, it's educational now, but it used to be for years and years where they trained all the priests. So it wasn't something, mediumship was definitely not something that was talked about in Ireland, I guess. You know, it's only the last few years where people have embraced it a lot. But that said, going back to, you know, generations, my grandmother, for example, and I have some memories, but not lots of memories of her, because unfortunately she passed at the age of 56 when I was only 7. But she taught me to read tea leaves when I was very young. So she used to read people, and her mother as well used to read palms, and she used to do spiritual readings, mediumship, and her mother as well. So it goes back through the generations. And then on my granddad's side of the family, we have lots of kind of traditional Irish stuff. So my granddad's name was O'Brien, which I think a lot of people, especially Irish, would be familiar with that name. So everybody in Ireland has O or E or Ni or something in their name, because everybody's the son of somebody or the daughter of somebody. That's the way Irish names are written. So my name's actually O'Byrne, but we don't generally use it on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So anybody with an O in their name, they're followed by a spirit called the Banshee, okay, which I don't know if people over there would have heard of. So some people say it's a mythical figure, but my great-granddad on my granddad's side of the family, he used to see the Banshee. And the Banshee is like a warning angel, if you like. Okay, so she comes and announces when there's going to be a death. You know, so he used to always see this. And where they lived was right beside a fairy fort, if you've ever heard of a fairy fort.
No, that was one of the questions from listening to your podcast was, tell us about the fairies. I mean, I was like,
yeah.
Oh.
Well, there's people now that would be obviously a lot more knowledgeable than I would, but we do have these little areas, I suppose. I don't know what you'd call them. They're like little patches of land that are controlled by the fairies, and it's bad luck if you interrupt them. So you can't do anything with them. Like, you can't cut down the trees or the grass or the flowers or anything there. And like, it's known that, you know, motorways are routed around these areas of land because it would be considered bad luck to do anything against. I actually have a fairy fort in the field behind my house. And last summer, there's a lot of hunts that go on around here. You know, they hunt foxes and that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but anyway. So for example, we were watching the hunt because they were going through the fields at the back of our house. And the poor little fox, he ran into the fairy fort and the hounds wouldn't go in there. So they circled it and they were waiting for him to come back out, but they wouldn't go in there and the horses wouldn't go in there either. So there's an energy around these places, and you're not supposed to go in there after dark. That's another part of it. Because when my great-grandmother married my great-grandfather and moved to his home place, she wanted to help out, even though she wasn't from a farming background herself. So when the men were bringing in the hay, so they would do it with the big trailer, the big forks, whatever. And then she'd go in with the cart, the donkey and cart, and she'd collect what was left at the edges. But she didn't know that she wasn't supposed to stay in there after dusk. And she got trapped in there overnight because you can't find your way out. They moved the gate. So every time she went to the gate, they moved it somewhere different. So she actually ended up sleeping in the cart overnight, and then she got out of the field the following morning. So they're very territorial little creatures, the fairies.
I've never heard anybody talk about fairies, so I love this. Okay.
Have you not?
A lot of people have questions about your mediumship, so let me back up a little bit.
Sure.
When did you realize you had these abilities?
So I didn't realize for a long time that what I was seeing was different to what other people are seeing, because when you see something as a child, you think everybody else can see it. So I don't remember a time where I didn't see spirit, but I can remember when I found out that it was different. And that's when I was 7, when my grandmother died. So even though I had been told that she passed away at 7, I didn't really know what passed away meant. And people were going, oh, you know, Nanny's living up in heaven with Holy God and all of this, you know. So when we were at the wake after the burial, we everybody was upset. And I had 5 uncles that were like big brothers to me, you know, and they were all upset, and I couldn't figure out, because they were all big, strong, you know, bodybuilders and, you know, big men. And I was saying, like, why are they crying? What's wrong? And somebody said to me, oh, Nanny's gone. She's not coming back. She's gone to heaven to live with Holy God. And I was like, but no, she's over there sitting down beside Granddad. You know, she used to always sit on the arm of his chair. So he'd sit in the armchair and she'd sit on the arm of his chair, and she'd put her arm around his shoulders like that. So I could still see her sitting there. And then all of a sudden everybody went, oh, you can't say that, you know, this and that. And I was like, okay, well, obviously they can't see it. So I thought that I shouldn't be seeing it. So that's kind of the age where a lot of children see spirit, but they get to an age where their logic kicks in and they realize that maybe, you know, not everybody can see it, or they shouldn't be seeing it, or whatever. And no child wants to be any different. Children want to be the same as each other. So that's when kids start to push it away. They don't want to connect with spirit. So for a few years, I didn't really connect as much. If you don't mind me, I know I'm talking maybe a little too much, but
No,
I
no, no.
had a best friend when I was a child. He was a little boy, but he was dead. But his mother used to bring him into my room every single night, and she used to tuck him in beside me. Huh?
I
He
said,
was
"Just
dead.
like
Yeah.
boy, he was dead."
He was dead. Because I used to sleep very badly because, my parents separated when I was young, but, before then there was a period of turbulence, like a lot of marriages. And so I'd be lying in bed, stressing. And so she used to bring this little boy in and she'd put him into bed beside me, and we'd laugh and we'd giggle and we'd play until we both fell asleep. And she used to stay and watch us all night. And then in the morning, she'd take him away before my mother came in to get us up. So when I got to 7, and then I realized that not everybody sees spirit, I started to push them all away, and that included him. But that broke my heart because I loved him, So
I
yeah, it was kind of,
emotion, even as you say it.
yeah, absolutely. Because he became to be my rock, and of course, the year that my grandmother had passed, my parents had split up just a few months before. So I was kind of really, reliant on him. And maybe it was time for him to go, maybe in the great plan of things, that I didn't become too overly dependent on him. But I did miss him for a long, long time. So I went through a period where kind of I just wanted to be a child. I just wanted to be the same as everybody else.
Normal.
And so normal, exactly. And, even in my teenage years, I thought I was schizophrenic. I didn't really know what schizophrenic was. I'd heard the term, but I thought it's probably better to be schizophrenic than to say that I see dead people. And I was really, really close to my cousin because my mother was one of 10, and, all the family were really, really close. So I was almost raised like a sister with my cousin. We were born just 5 months apart. So if I wasn't at her house, she was at my house. And one night she said to me, "Sandie," she said, "I have to tell you something." I was like, "What? Is there something wrong?" And she goes, "I hear people." She said, "I hear people talking to me all the time." And I said, "Well, thank God for that, because I can see the two of us just laughed, And I felt better then because somebody else was, experiencing what I was experiencing. And I suppose that's where it started from then, because I kind of thought then, well, maybe it's not so bad, And then my spirit guides started to come in more once I became more open to it. And, they used to come into my bedroom and knock things over and pull the duvet and, whatever. But then, like anybody, I had 2 passings, 2 relatives that passed. My granddad, who I always say he's the love of my life, even still, because he was like a father figure to us. And he passed away from cancer when I was 14. And 10 weeks later, then my uncle, who was like my big brother, passed after a motorcycle accident. And I got angry with spirit again because I said, if you can't help me, why should I help you? And I pushed them away again. So just as it was opening up, I pushed it away again. Okay, until I was when I was 17, then I was living and working in Germany. And I had an incident there which reconnected me with spirit. Would you like me to go into that? Am I talking too much?
But yes. On the road. I remember.
On the road, yeah. So I was living in a small village called Rietberg, which is about 100 kilometers southwest of Frankfurt. And I was out jogging one afternoon, and it was like a really quiet place, and it's just vineyards for miles and miles and miles around, and you don't see anybody. You go for miles without seeing anybody. So I was jogging one day, and I had a very beautiful 1990s personal stereo, a personal cassette player with lovely orange earphones. Do you remember those ones? And I was running anyway with Simon and Garfunkel playing, and next thing I heard this voice shouting at me to run. And I was like, okay, someone's making fun of me now because I am running. And I thought maybe someone had come up behind me or something, And I looked around and there was nobody there. And I thought, Sandie, you're daydreaming. So I kept on anyway. And another minute later, I heard this run now as quick as you can. And I was like, what? Next thing, this car came along, and there was no cars. It was really quiet. This car came along, and when a car is playing music so loud that you could feel the vibration.
Yeah.
And as the car passed, I still remember it really clearly in my head, like it was in slow motion. There was 5, I want to say boys. They were only like 18, 19, in the car. And they had the music going really loud. And as they drove past, I was looking at them and each one of them looked at me, but the car kept going. And I was like, this is really strange. And next thing I heard, run now, run as quick as you can. So I thought, I feel really stupid. But instead of running on the road, I turned into the vineyard and I ran down halfway down the field and I jumped in between 2 rows of vines. And I waited and I thought, I feel really stupid. I'm so glad nobody can see me right now. And didn't the car come back? They turned around and they came back, and these 5 guys got out. And no joking, they spent 20 minutes searching around at each side of the road.
Mm.
And one, I'd say, was only about, 6-7 meters away from me. And I was getting ready to run. But just then, one guy up at the road, he called them all back. He said, come on, we'll go. So they obviously thought I was gone. And I still waited there for another 15, 20 minutes after they left. And then I ran home through the fields, So then I was thinking, well, okay, spirits are around. They're helping me somehow, So I started to open up to it slowly a little bit more. But it took a long time to get to the point where I felt comfortable reading for other people.
Yeah.
That was a good few years later. But it was at that point I realized, I suppose, being 17, I probably, realized that, people have to die. People have to come and go. I was maybe a little bit more logical and less emotional at that point. And, I kind of started to work with them then,
Right.
and it all happened from there.
I have like 3 things I want to ask you or say about what you've said. So let me jump in.
Sure.
So first of all, the end of that story is they captured another girl. I know from your podcast.
Not the same guys, but I did read a story years later. It was actually about a girl that was in the States. And I read this story years later, and I never said anything to anybody. I was quieter when I was younger. Obviously, I've kissed the Blarney Stone since because I talk a lot now. But yeah, a girl in the States, I remember reading her story, and it was quite similar in that she was, we would say thumbing, but I guess you say hiking in the States, where you thumb a lift. And she was picked up by a guy in a truck, and they drove for several hours, and then they stopped at a service station, a diner or whatever, and they got something to eat. So she went in to use the restroom before they left again. And as she was washing her hands, she heard a voice telling her to run, to get out the window and run. And she turned around to see whether had somebody else come in, and there was nobody else there. And she looked, and the window was open, but in order to get out the window, she'd have had to climb up on the sink and then out the window. And she thought, no, that would be crackers. And the voice said, no, do it, run, just climb out the window and run and don't look back. And she didn't. And that guy, when she went out and got back in the truck, he kept her for 7 years until she managed to escape. And that's when I think it really hit me of what could have happened. Because at 17, you don't think of what could have happened. You just know something's wrong,
Right. For sure.
And that sent shivers through me, just thinking of what could have happened.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
No
So the other thing I wanted to comment on was when you said you were mad at them, so you didn't want to help them. And by the way, I see the comments coming in, so we'll have questions. I'm just going to tell everybody we will have time for questions. I just am enjoying, Sandie, you sharing more about your story. So we get to know kind of how you became Sandie, the Irish psychic medium. But I love when you said you were mad at them, so you didn't want to help them. Because that was something I learned when I did my mediumship training was we always think that the medium is helping the person who comes. But what I realized is when I was doing it and connecting with people, they were my client. Like I was helping the person on the other side connect.
Sure. Of course.
The quote sitter, in front of you, which is what we always think. Have
Yeah.
you found that too?
Well, in some way you can help both. But at that time, I wasn't doing readings for people. You know, it was just spirit who maybe wanted to, I don't know, I suppose through me, maybe give out some kind of a message.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that spirit are always trying to do, even though we do it on a one-to-one with, clients, as we call them, or sitters, the real message that they want to give out is that there's more to life.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't just fall into a black abyss, once you're finished your earthly life.
Right.
Okay. And that's the one message. And it really is. And I see this time and time again, it's to raise the energy. We're always trying to raise the energy of everybody here. And the more you raise your energy, the more peace you find in life, the more understanding, the
Mm-hmm.
more hunger you have for the good things in life. And this is what spirit are always trying to tell us. Now, I'm not here to promote my own, but I did do a whole episode on why spirit watches from the afterlife, and what they get from it. And, one of the things that I talk a lot about in that episode is just that they see what their legacy is. And this is really important to them because, coming back to see, maybe the children that they had, maybe the work that they've done in their career, maybe they spent their life, working on the environment, and this has left a legacy. So everybody wants to feel like they've left a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And by connecting with us, they're finding out how that legacy is, serving their memory, but also serving us, after their passing. So it's really important for them to know that they've left a footprint here, and that it's still important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love what you said about raising our vibration, because some of us, me included, can get stuck in the grief. And the other thing I got from the mediumship is they want us in the life between lives as well, that
Sure.
this life is important and we're still here and we still have
Yeah.
something to do. So I love David Kessler, the grief counselor. He says, grieve fully and live fully, that they want us to go on with our lives.
Of course. And I was just going to say that grief is a really important process, and I always say to people who ring up, and they say, oh, I buried somebody last week or whatever. I say, give yourself at least 3 months. Okay. And there's two sides to that. We need to grieve here on earth. Okay. We need to accept that this person isn't coming back. But what about the person that's died? They also need to grieve because they've not, like, we've lost them, one person. They've lost us. Maybe brothers and sisters, maybe parents, maybe children, work colleagues, friends. They've lost their full circle of people here. They've lost the life that they had, the future they thought they were going to have. They need to grieve for so much more. And we have to give them time to grieve as well. So on both sides of life, grieving has to be done. And it's a really important process. So I say to people, grieve first, okay? Connect later, because mediumship is amazing, and it can give such closure, but it is not a substitute for grief counseling.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not.
And my teacher told me that their vibration is so high and ours is so low that when we're grieving, we can't really connect anyway. I mean, granted, mine was after my dog died. I went, I was still fresh in my grief, but he said traditionally it's better to wait a bit because it's harder to connect when we're down here in the grief so much. Okay.
100%. But sorry, Vondie, there's a slight delay. I don't mean to cut across you. But as well as that, we talk about the vibration, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the way I describe it to people is, do you have those machines for children in the mall where there's like a big claw that comes down and picks up a teddy bear?
Yeah.
And so I always say to people,
it always falls out.
It's too loose. But I always say to people, imagine if a big claw like that came out of the sky and picked you up off the street and dropped you, I don't know, in the middle of Persia where nobody spoke English, right? Well, you're not going to be able to communicate immediately with people around you. It's going to take time for you to learn to communicate in that way. And it's the same when we get to spirit. We don't have a voice box. We don't have a voice, okay? And we don't have a language. So it's a completely different way of communicating. So they need time to adjust to that as well. So I totally get, what your teacher taught you. It's exactly what I get from spirit as well. So I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so the comments are coming in. I have more questions for you, but let me look and see what people are saying.
Sure.
Why do some people like Sandie hear and see the dead from the get-go, but people like me have to meditate or train or pray to see
That we see
dead?
dead people.
In other words,
Hey,
some
Stacey.
ability, like we always say, we can all sing, but maybe not like Beyonce, you know?
Yes, exactly. I always say that too. So what I'd say to you, Stacey, is I'm not any different to you. Okay. There's days where I'm going to struggle too. My energy can be low. I'm like last night, I was up with a sick cat half the night. My energy's been really low today, and you have to work harder at it. But personally, where I think the difference lies is my family background. And if you've been with us since the beginning, I was talking about my grandmothers and my great grandmothers, and that they all had the ability to read spirit as well. So when I was little and I would say that I saw people, nobody said to me, "Oh, she's got an imaginary friend," or "She's imagining it." My grandmother always knew. She said, "Oh, she can see the spirit." That's what she used to say. She can see the spirit, So nobody ever said to me, "You're imagining it," or "It's an imaginary friend," or anything like that. It was kind of accepted. And my grandmother was the kind, when the house creaks or sometimes the door randomly opens in a house. So if we were sitting down having tea and the door would open, my grandmother would stand up and say, "Come in and sit down." And she would literally put out another cup and pour a cup of tea for this spirit who had entered the room. So it was accepted that spirit were around. And I suppose, because of that, I held on to the connection. Even though I didn't want to admit that the connection was always there, I still had the connection because it was believed going back generations. So that's probably the difference. So I know you're saying that you have to meditate and train and pray that you see the dead people. It's like, I don't know if you have the saying over there, we say much once more. Sometimes you might want it too badly. Okay. What I say to my students when I teach, because I teach mediumship as well, and I say, just talk to them as you're going around your daily business. So if you're washing the floor, if you're folding the laundry, if you're filing at work, whatever you're doing, talk to your loved ones in spirit, make them part of your day. And that's a nicer and gentler way of telling them that you're ready to receive from them. So if you make them part of your day, they will make you part of theirs. So try that more than the lots of meditating. I guarantee you it will work better.
I love that.
And I hope it helps.
Yes. So when did you know that you wanted to step into doing this as a career or calling? I mean, did you do other work? I remember you worked in the city, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, I've had several. I worked in London for the Financial Times for a while. And I worked in banking in Ireland, but I spent the majority of my time working in third level education, which is like university education here. But I never chose to work at mediumship. It wasn't a career choice,
It chose you.
It chose me. Yeah, I went to a convent school. So if you didn't want to be a teacher or a nurse, you could just be a housewife, and there were your choices. Nobody ever taught of mediumship. But of course, because I could sense spirit and feel them or whatever, I had a great interest in mediumship. And mediums never came to my town. They never came here. But once a medium did, once. So I booked tickets to go and see her. And I was sitting up at the back of the audience, and I was enjoying this show so much. And when it came to the interval, there was a lady and a gentleman sitting in front of me, and they just looked at each other and shook their heads, and they were getting up to leave. And sometimes things just come out of your mouth when you're a medium and you don't realize that you're saying it. And I just said to her, I just went, "Don't go." And she looked at me and I said, "Your son is here, but you're so nervous about not getting a message for him that he's afraid to leave you and go on stage to connect with the medium." And then I started to tell her all these different things about him, and, you know, ways that she was remembering him and all kinds of information. And I have to say, it just came out. I don't even really remember exactly what I said. I remember about his urn and his ashes and that. But anyway, so I spent the interval reading for this lady, and she was crying. And at the end, she just held my hand and she said, he wasn't our son, he was our grandson. She said, but I raised him from the day he was born.
Mm.
So even though he was their grandson, they'd raised him, he was their son. So anyway, I said, look, I hope that that gives you some peace. So they stayed for the second half of the show, and that was grand. The lady on stage finished and everybody clapped and everything went quiet for a second. And then this lady stood up in the middle of the audience and she said, everybody, she said, if you want a reading, don't worry about that woman on stage. You need to go and see this girl that's sitting behind me. And I was like, oh my God. And my boss was at this show and from my job. And so everybody came up to me then afterwards asking for my number. So by the end of the weekend, I had 3 months worth of bookings, you know, and it just started from there. So it was never a conscious decision that I was going to do this. I just got busy, and then I cut down my work to 4 days a week, and then I cut down my work to 3 days a week, and then I took a career break, and I'm still doing it today. So yeah, it just happened by accident, really.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little wrap up here. We do have our little Life Between Lives bags from when we started the show, and we still have a few left. So they are for people who participate. If you would like to send your address to support@lifebetweenliveshypnosis.com. The email is in the website, and maybe we can even show it now if possible. Support@lifebetweenliveshypnosis.com for those of you who participated in the discussion today. And I also wanted to say, I'm just looking at my little notes here. To connect with Sandie, go to sandiebyrne.com, and her website is also in our comments. And if we can, we'll see if we can put that up as well. She does the psychic readings, the mediumship readings, and then mediumship mentorship, which is what I experienced. It was a different teacher, but where I was developing my mediumship abilities. So she has many things that she offers, and you can connect with her there. There we go. Sandie Byrne. Did we get the spelling right, Sandie? Sandie Byrne.
I can't see it.
Oh, I think I copied it from your site, so I think we're good.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm sure my name is there anyway. Yes, I see it. Yes, Sandie Byrne. That's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So you can reach out to Sandie there. And I just wanted to say thank you again, Sandie, for being with us today and for your generosity with answering all of our questions and reassuring all of our fears. That was, I think, the beautiful message today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I didn't stop talking.
No, I told you I felt like we could go for hours. It was true.
Yeah,
no,
definitely.
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you join us next week. We're going to be talking about how advanced souls choose harder lives, but it can still be a good life. So thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you then. And thank you again, Sandie. Lots of love.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow. And join us next week for another episode of Soul Guide.